Hi, Tuva. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Sorry about I'm in a car and being a couple of minutes late. It's
Ah,
just a new world, isn't it?
It's all
Uh,
good. I'm sure you'll hear this a lot when you're doing interviews for this, but it's just absolutely wonderful TV. Um, what for fans of the show, of which there are many around the world, who are interested to know about this kind of this third season, this rebirth. Who is Anna? How does she fit into this story?
I'm still not sure I know who and what she is and did, and I asked Lars in the beginning. I was like, I really don't understand her. I'm not sure I get. He's like, no, well, I see her as kind of Donald Duck. I was like, all right, yeah, sure, let's go for Donald Duck then. And then in the end, I only found out in the end what she really was because he kind of made that up as we went. And so it was really just about letting him create, it's almost like you come with the filling of something that, or the contour of something that he put the filling into. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah. So she's basically a neuropsychologist. But
Mm.
other than that, she fills a space which you won't really understand until the very last scene of the series, which I love.
Is that quite scary for an actor to take on a project? And I mean, obviously, there's such an element of trust when it comes to Lars von Trier. You know that you're in the safest hands possible when it comes to that style of filmmaking. But is it still quite scary, kind of getting into a project thinking, I don't actually know how this is going to go? Because I guess the script can be a kind of safety net for some people or guide.
Yeah, and so, well, the script is there and it's cemented. You stick to the script, even though you might not always understand what it's about. There are lines, and there's never very much improvisation in terms of lines and such. So you do have the script to hang on to, but yes, it's extremely, I think, scary for some. And so I'm really happy that I have, like 25 years in my spine, and I've got some kids under my belt, and stuff like that. So I feel kind of secure. It's just a movie in a way, or a series. But I know that for some it was really scary to come in, because the way Lars works is you come in the morning and basically say good morning and then roll the cameras. So there's no rehearsing, there's no planning, there's no where should I stand, what do you want me to do. That comes later. And
Mm.
so it's super scary in that sense, that there might be a certain extent of not really understanding the bigger picture, because nobody knows except for Lars. And then also this practical kind of way of shooting, which is terrifying for some. I thought it was just like, great, I just need to know my lines and then we'll see what happens, in a way. But I know it's scary for some. Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, I mean, they're talking a bit scary. I mean, there's this word, this show or series or film, whatever you want to call it, has a cult following. Do those words, the words cult following, scare actors, knowing that there's that kind of expectant fan base in place, or is it something that you've, with experience, have learned to kind of thrive on, and actually having a big cult following is actually a real positive to take?
I mean, for this one, since it felt like and which we also did, we just kind of finished something he was already doing. There was already a third season planned. And so I don't feel, I would be more terrified if it was like a rebirth of something that, was made 20 years ago. But since I know he had the idea for this even then, so it felt like, and even watching it now, I think it feels like it's just taking on where he kind of left it. It's not really trying to reshape anything or recreate anything. It's just he's doing the same thing basically, and it looks like it too. So I don't feel that very terrifying either. And I feel like the hardcore fans that I've spoken to so far, they've also felt like, oh, great. I spoke to one journalist who was like, he was having such a stomach pain, he was like scared to see it because what if it just didn't live up to his, 20 years of expectation. And he was like, I could finally breathe. It's just as it's supposed to be.
When it
Yeah.
comes to creators and storytellers like Lars von Trier, is it one of those rare occasions where you can literally just say yes and sign up to a project to work with him, even before you've ever read or found out what the project is all about?
With Lars, it's been, of course, he's had his ups and downs. And so, but I have to say, with any director or any project, for me, it's always a matter of, the building stones of the project. So yeah, I love Lars and I'd happily work with him again. But also, it has to be a project where the script is interesting, or your co-workers and so on. So no, I wouldn't work with Lars just to work with Lars. If it was like a script I didn't like, and I just love this project, thankfully. So this was a big yes. But yeah, no, I think it's always a mix.
Yeah, because I mean, you've obviously made films yourself. I mean, Lars von Trier, I mean, alongside, so Thomas Vinterberg and other sort of Scandinavian filmmakers and part of that Dogma kind of movement, had such a profoundly kind of incredible effect on cinema and the way we perceive kind of storytelling. As someone who stepped behind the lens, how big of an inspiration have they been to filmmakers, even without maybe noticing those sort of inspirations or influences exist, I suppose?
I mean, having been a teenager in the early mid 90s, I was super inspired by like Harmony Korine and Larry Clark. And I think for Scandinavians, what Lars and Thomas to a certain extent also did with the Dogma movement was kind of taking that indie way of shooting, even though Harmony Korine and Larry Clark was not in any way shooting in the same way. There was this certain type of authenticity that we hadn't had before. And so, yeah, they've been a huge inspiration, because I lean towards the more authentic kind of way of working as well. Or, I want to go that direction in acting wise, at least with my actors when I direct. So, yeah, they've been a huge inspiration. I think not just acting wise, but also visually, how they chose to break a lot of rules in terms of composition and so on. So, yeah, huge inspiration.
You mentioned being a teenager in the 90s. How well do you remember the Kingdom when it first aired? Did you watch it at the time, or did you have to catch up later on in life?
I was too young. I hadn't seen it. I saw it when I was older, and I think, working with it now was good, because I have friends who saw it in their teens and was like, worshipping it basically. So I'm happy I didn't at the time, because I think I would have been more terrified and like to work with it now. But yeah, so I didn't have any relation to the Kingdom then, actually.
And what I was interested to know as well, what about the filming process? Is it a built set? Or is it like on a location of an old abandoned hospital? Where do you kind of make this show?
So there's a mix, but the majority of this show is made in the actual. So the Kingdom is the nickname for the main hospital of Copenhagen, which is called the Kingdom. You call it the Kingdom. It's huge. And it's where we've shot the majority of the show. Then, of course, there's loads of studio and stuff like that. But yeah, all the hospital scenes that are they're basically shot in the Kingdom. And this was shot during the pandemic, so it was like it was mad to be in a hospital with a whole film crew, in and out every day. We had to do, I think, 3 tests a day. It was ridiculous, to just being able to be there. But at the time, they had a section that was closed for building or something. So we were actually shooting in the Kingdom.
Yeah, because I was going to say, during a pandemic, the one place most people wanted to avoid was the hospital.
No, it's crazy. And Lars, he doesn't really love hospitals at all. So they had an idea of him staying outside the hospital in a trailer. That didn't work so much. He had to enter the hospital in the end. But yeah, he did not love that.
It feels like a set containing many people that knew each other, because it's such a kind of greatest hits of kind of Scandinavian cinema and TV from across the years. Was that the case? And if so, does it breed quite a nice familiarity and on set, which actually brings out kind of great performances from the people?
I believe in people feeling safe and secure at work, and especially when you do stuff in front of a camera. And yes, a lot of people knew each other, but I think also a lot of people just love Lars and love the Kingdom. So even though there was a lot of new blood into this series in comparison to the previous seasons, it was just this sense of importance to the project, because Lars is getting older, and he's also got his disease to fight and so on. So I think everyone was just real happy to be there. So knowing each other or not, it was just that kind of, air around the whole project. So we went happy to work. We laughed our asses off during the whole day of shooting, and then we went happy home, and that, I think, you can kind of sense watching the result.
Yeah, I was laughing my ass off just watching it. But good
We
effect.
were too.
Yeah. And my final question then, because I mean, you mentioned before about your influences, you mentioned like Harmony Korine and sort of Larry Clark and people like that. And I think that's quite that's been shown in your career. You've been someone that's always moved between different places to make your sort of your films or TV. And I mean, that's as an actor and as a sort of director. Is that just the way you always like to work? Do you have conscious decisions about where you'd like to work next? So go, I might like to try and make a film in an English language in Hollywood, or go back home and do one in sort of Scandinavia, or do you just follow the best projects, the best stories, and just see where the wind blows?
Follow your guts.
Yeah.
Always. I'm trying now because, eventually in a lifespan of a career, you kind of realize that, okay, maybe, a circus artist in animal costumes, which was my last directorial movie, wasn't such a great idea. So I've tried that now and I don't want to do that again. But, and so, during a career, I guess you realize kind of what you might be better at. So I might lean towards some certain projects now because I guess, I guess I'm just better at that. But at the same time, there's no planning. No, I think, just try everything. Life's too short.
Yeah.
Follow your guts. Yeah.
Well, following your guts has taken you to good places so far. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm having fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Tuva, and best of luck
Thank
with
you.
the show. Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey,